I think most of us are coming from more of a standpoint on where why don't we lend everything? Which I think some people will be from the public library perspective and others may not. They may not have heard of this. Well, let's share everything except for hate and like really dangerous germs. Like let's not share underwear, but yet beyond that, we've got a lot more in the world we can share, right? So that kind of different way of interacting with the world has hit some aspects of public libraries. And then I'd say there's always someone who doesn't know, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so I just like to have you all pause again and take a think about what could a lending ecosystem look like in your community. It's going to look different than yours and mine. For ours, for example, as part of developing our library of things, we also were able to help develop this. There was an amazing our food insecurity team and emergency food preparation folks. They created an amazing community kitchen in our area. Another folks, we were able to make all bus passes free to meet the needs of asylum seekers and things. We were going to lend bikes and taxi cab rides and things as out of the library, but we actually had to stop that due to COVID. Because sharing rides at the time when we didn't know wasn't the best idea. But your library could look really different. So I think it's thinking about what you have. Maybe you have some cool gear rental places. Maybe you have a neat makerspace nearby. Maybe you have none of this, but you're like, okay, what do we want to have and what the priorities are? And how does that public library play a role in that? Because I think it's important to recognize what folks already lend. So maybe you don't have to start there, or maybe you could do something complementary. So for example, we don't lend any gear at our public library. It's not because we don't think gear is important, but we don't want to deal with a few different things. We also don't lend any certain instruments, not because we don't think instruments are important, but we didn't want to deal with a few different things. And these are the things. So this is a really messy slide, but you get the concept, right? So this is what people immediately go to. And there's very good reasons because have we dealt with it? Some of them haven't dealt with dismemberment yet, never want to. But there's those real issues, okay? I was telling you, spit. We don't want to deal with that. There's great people who rent instruments for this reason. They know how to deal with spit. But we're going to deal with the instruments that don't deal with spit. We don't want to deal with lice. We do deal with lice. We don't want to deal with bed bugs. We do deal with bed bugs. And so we're not going to do hammocks. We're not going to do with anything with helmets. We have a lot of libraries are going to have space concerns. Ours did too. But there's actually specific methods in the public library. There's called CREW. There's like a way that you specifically learn how to get rid of what material at the right time. And so you can actually incorporate things into that policy. And so there's ways to work around established library functions that incorporate things as well. And whatever a thing is, maybe a thing is land because you're lending land and community garden plots in your community. Maybe a thing are loans. Maybe a thing is art. I don't know. But the point is it could be integrated. And so I think it's really interesting for you as a tool library and us as public libraries and us as all these things to think about what exists and how we could lend it. And I want to make sure that I key you into one key aspect that I think has been underutilized in public libraries, which are something called passes. Right now, a lot of us lend a museum pass. So you'll see that on this calendar. You can come to many, many, many public libraries around the US, at least, and in other countries as well, and say, I'd like to go to the Coastal Botanical Gardens, or I'd like to go to the state parks, I'd like to go to this. Well, why couldn't you just go say, I'd like to go to the kayak rental place, or I'd like to go to the toy library, or I'd like to go to the makerspace? That is an option that does exist, and yes, some libraries are doing. Okay, so this future is totally possible, and we could totally talk together about how to make this happen for oodles of time. And I think it just needs to be adaptable to your community members, actors, power, types of resources, your values, and your priorities. And so I think it's really important to think about that and what your goals are before you approach a public library.